I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today. A friend of mine sent me this video right here titled Brokeback Zombie Farm, and it is by Ben Shapiro, who is a conservative political commentator. To my knowledge, Ben Shapiro is not an expert in storytelling, but he appears to think it is okay to critique films, I guess, and TV shows in this case. Storytelling is my area of expertise, so I'm going to kind of react or critique his critique. But fear not, this is not going to get political. I can't stand politics. I never talk about politics. So let us get on with the video and see what Ben has to say about The Last of Us. With a title like this, I can only assume what it's going to be, but let's have a listen.
Okay, time for a thing that I hate.
All right, he already hates it. We know that.
Okay, so we are going to steer into some dicey waters here. I'm about to criticize an episode of the TV show, The Last of Us. So I'm going to say right up front, HBO's The Last of Us, right? This is the one that stars Pedro Pascal. And it's really well produced, written by Craig Mazin, who's a super talented guy. He's the one who is behind Chernobyl. Okay, so first the things about this series that are good. And again, preface, I've never played the game. So
okay, I'll cut him some slack there because if you played the game, you're going to know a lot of the things that he may or may not have gleaned from the TV show yet, even though I would argue that watching episode 1 and 2 and 3, you should understand these things, but we'll talk about that more as we get on with this video.
Don't care about the game. Don't care about how true it is to the game. There are lots of gamers out there. You want to watch their videos on the correlation between the game and the show. That's fine. I'm just watching it as a piece of pure TV entertainment. Okay, I'm coming from, I don't care what's canon. I don't care what's not canon. Just coming at it from the view of a TV viewer, so I'm just going to say that right up front. That is not my particular purview. I don't play video games because I'm not a child. I know. I'm just joking. Lots of good people play video games. Okay, in any case, including Andrew Clavin, who's a mediocre person.
Yeah, I had to get some other comments in there, I guess.
Anyway, The Last of Us is for those who haven't seen it, it is a zombie show. Okay, it's a show about a zombie apocalypse that essentially arises because fungi go viral, essentially, and take over people's brains and turn them into zombies. That is the premise of the show. And it's really well produced, and it's beautifully shot, and it's really well scripted, and all the rest. So the first 2 episodes are about Pedro Pascal finding, again, some of this is sort of hackneyed trope, but he is introduced to the other main character, who is a young girl. The young girl is, for some reason, immune to the zombie virus. And so the question is, can he get her to a place where presumably they're going to try to manufacture a cure from her, right? That's where the show is going, I would assume, because any other place doesn't make any sense. So it is this character, Joel, and this character, Ellie, and they are navigating the zombie apocalypse. And then we get to, so that's the first couple episodes. And they're good. They're really compelling. Again, really well.
Debatable. I have a lot of problems with this show, by the way, but I'm going to save that for my review.
Well made, really well written. And then we get to episode 3. And this, according to the media, is the single greatest episode of television that has ever been. If you read the headlines on episode 3, this is the most important thing that has ever happened in the history of television.
He's right. This is definitely hyperbole. I enjoyed the episode. I thought it was good. Did I think it was great? No. Do I think it was the greatest thing on TV since whenever? Of course not. So yeah, he's right. This is definitely getting blown out of proportion in terms of quality storytelling, let's say.
CNN, The Last of Us, just made an early claim to one of the best TV episodes of 2023.
Oh, 2023. Sorry, I'm wrong. Yeah, maybe it was. I don't watch a lot of TV because I find most TV is terrible. So yeah, maybe this was one of the best episodes of 2023. I mean, 2023 is barely here.
The Last of Us viewership soars 12% to a new series high with heartbreaking episode 3. It's historic. It's important. Okay, guys, it's historic and important. Now, why is it historic and important? It's historic and important because it's about 2 gay dudes. That's why. So the essential plot of this episode, which is the problem with this episode, and again, you want to make Brokeback Zombie Farm or whatever, fine. But the problem with this episode is that it absolutely does not advance the plot in any way and actually has no consequences.
I would say wrong. Consequences, yeah, he's probably right. Advancing the plot, I would disagree. So maybe Ben doesn't know this, but really in storytelling, you want to, there's 2 things you're going for. It's either a revealing character, I should say, or advancing the plot. Ideally, you're doing both at the same time. You do not always need to do both things. So advancing the plot, I would say the way to advance the plot is that We know that Joel and Ellie are headed there to get a cache of weapons. He owes them a truck or something like that. So that is how it advances the plot. I wouldn't say during the actual episode it doesn't advance the plot, but the result of the story does advance the plot. What Ben may or may not know, like I said, storytelling can reveal character. This episode is all about character. So, sorry, Ben, but you're incorrect.
So the entire plot of the episode is that Ron Swanson, Nick Offerman, but he actually plays Ron Swanson, but Ron Swanson who likes to nail dudes. So Ron Swanson, a libertarian who hates the government and lives in his basement and is a prepper, but also is gay. Ron Swanson, during the zombie apocalypse, he's having himself a grand old time. For some reason, his town is completely not.
I mean, he kind of makes fun of that he's a prepper and he's gay, but that's irony, right? Or it could be argued as irony. And irony is a very powerful tool in storytelling. I would argue it's one of the most powerful tools in storytelling. So I will definitely give them credit there.
Not hit by any of the zombies at all. It's like completely
The writers, that is, not Ben Shapiro.
left alone. And so he goes out and gets all of his resources, and then he builds a nice fence around his place, and he sets up all of these booby traps. So if anybody shows up, whether they're raiders, whether they're zombies, they're going to get killed. And then somehow another dude ends up like falling into one of his traps, and they meet, and they bang, and they end up becoming a couple. Okay, so you can see it here, right? There's gay Ron Swanson. And it's complete with like sex scenes and the whole thing. And the entire episode has no zombies, no real threat.
Real threat? He just mentioned raiders, and if I remember correctly, it's been a little while since I've watched episode 3, but raiders do try to break into this little cozy utopia that he's created, and with fire, I believe one of the guys gets shot, if I remember correct. So I'm not sure why he forgot that. He did bring up raiders a little bit ago. So anyway,
and it is about two gay dudes who meet and have a relationship in which one grows strawberries for the other, and then they die, but not.
It's so funny because he is really, he's criticizing this in a way where he's pointing out things that are on the surface, right? It is not about a guy growing strawberries and then they die. So I know what he's doing here, right? But anyway, I thought I should talk about
being killed by zombies or under threat. One dies, he gets cancer, and he decides to essentially euthanasia himself. And
that's true, but I think what Ben's missing here is that The Last of Us, if you've never played the game, it's not about the zombies, right? The zombies are there as a means to be conflict, be a problem, but this show is about people, about relationships, and what this episode is about is even at the end of the world, these two men are trying to find peace. They're trying to find a new life. That's what this episode's about. It doesn't have to always be about zombies attacking and surviving zombie attacks. And remember how boring The Walking Dead got after 10 seasons? Yeah.
And gay Ron Swanson decides that he is also going to commit suicide at the same time because Romeo and Juliet, or Romeo and Romeo in this particular case. Here's the problem. It's all really well produced and it's beautifully shot.
I'll save it for my review.
Brokeback Zombie Farm. Here's the problem with Brokeback Zombie Farm. One, it's a zombie show. There are no zombies.
So it's not necessarily a zombie show. Yes, zombies are part of the major conflict, the catalyst, let's say, for how humans are attempting to survive or move on. But I wouldn't say it's just a zombie show.
In this entire episode, like none. I understand simplistic critique, but there are no zombies in a zombie show. This is worth pointing out. It literally has nothing to do with the plot of the show.
So yeah, I guess if you look at the plot on a surface level, meaning the goal is to somehow survive the zombie attacks, then yeah, he has a point. But that's really not what the show's about. And unfortunately, you can't look a little bit deeper than the surface, which is really showing his eye as a storyteller.
This is a show where this show could have this entire episode could have taken place completely without a zombie apocalypse. It just would have been a Showtime romance between two middle-aged gay dudes who get older. One dies of cancer and the other assisted suicides himself.
Well, I mean, yes and no. The reason why it works in here is because it's a contrast to how the world is. On the outside world is falling apart. However, they were able to create, somewhat of a little paradise for themselves. And that's what makes this interesting. That's what makes it powerful. It's that even these two men, to a degree, have forgotten what the outside world is. And so that is what this is about, Ben. I'm sorry you're missing that.
That would have been the entire, it would not have changed one iota of the show. It is completely irrelevant to the story.
No, the story, again, is more powerful because of the context, the world that it is taking place in. If this were just some Anytown USA, it would not have had the same power as this one did. Because again, the looming dangers outside of this compound.
And one of the reasons that it is completely irrelevant to the story is because there are no stakes. And the reason that there are no stakes is because, again, we are in the middle of...
What does he mean by stakes? I mean, stakes are survival. We see that raiders come in. We see that Bill and Frank, they know this. They kind of forget this. And I think that's, again, I know I keep repeating myself, but that's what makes this powerful, is that we can sometimes shut ourselves in and forget about the dangers of the outside world. And that's exactly what they did here. And there's stakes, Ben. I'm sorry. I don't know why you didn't see that. Maybe there's no stakes for the overall surface level plot, which is really not at all what this show is about. Not at all what the story is about.
Of a zombie apocalypse. When you're in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, one of two issues has to come into play.
It even shows the raiders right here. How is this not stakes, Ben? I don't get it.
One, the threat of the zombies, or two, the threat to humanity more broadly.
No, he's looking at this from a completely juvenile, rudimentary level. If he thinks that this show is about strictly humanity's survival, then he's completely missing the point. I don't think he's a stupid guy, but he's being pretty stupid here, or ignorant anyway.
So if you're talking about the threat to humanity more broadly during the zombie apocalypse, what you're talking about is underpopulation, right? You're talking about there are no people. The zombies are going to take over. Humanity is going to be extinct. That is the entire threat in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, sure, I guess, if you look at it again, broadly speaking. But again, the show is not about that. The show is... I'll get into it a little bit when he brings up Joel and Ellie. I think he does anyway, but he's looking at this in black and white terms, right? Storytelling is not black and white. There are so many gradients, right? There's subtext, there's theme. It does not always have to be about, in his logic, every end of the world movie would be repopulation. And considering he's a conservative political commentator, I know he's religious. I know what he's getting at here. He's not outright saying it, and it's unfortunate that he is trying to put his beliefs through a storytelling lens, because his storytelling lens is very, very foggy.
Correct? Or in an alien invasion movie. Or in any other sort of species-level extinction event movie, like War of the Worlds or something. The question is, how do human beings repopulate? How do
They're doing that. I mean, they're setting up compounds. They're trying to. We don't see this until I think it's like episode 4, but we see that they're coming together. They're trying to create some sense of normalcy, just like Bill and Frank were doing in the micro, but they're doing it in the macro. They haven't specifically established repopulation from a breeding standpoint, but yeah, they're trying to create some semblance of civilization. So I would disagree here. I think that's pretty apparent. Even as early as episode 3.
How do they survive, and how do they become successful once again?
Yeah, episode 1 and 2. We see all of this. I don't know what he's talking about.
If you're going to censor an episode like that, what you need to do is you need to have an episode about people who can have babies.
Oh, here it is, Ben. Here it comes. People who have babies. Again, he's making a massive logical leap, in that the storytellers, he's assuming the storytellers of The Last of Us, the writers of The Last of Us, are so naive, they are so unskilled, that they are literally writing a story exclusively about human survival at large and reproduction. But anyway, let's keep going with this.
Again, there are only two issues in a zombie apocalypse. You could have this whole thing, but the whole thing is these two dudes in love, but they're fighting off zombies. But they never fight off the zombies. It's not an issue. So, irrelevant.
They fight off raiders. Stakes, right? And I know he hasn't played the game, so I'm going to cut him some slack here. You'll know that in the game, it starts off as being zombie problems, and then it quickly turns into raider problems, human problems. And I think that's honestly why I love the apocalyptic tales so much, is because it allows us to look back at ourselves as humans and see what we can do under these circumstances, how quickly we can turn on each other. And if he's missing that, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. But he needs to watch more movies or read some more books on storytelling.
Or you could have them somehow interact with the main characters. They never do.
They do a little bit. And granted, this episode honestly was a little bit fan service. So if you've ever played the game, you'll know that Bill is briefly in the game. We don't know his backstory. We do know that he had a partner named Frank, and this was expanding upon that. This was like a, hey, what if we told the story of Bill and Frank? And I thought it was kind of a cool thing. Now, I did talk to some people who had never played the game, and they did feel like it was a little bit out of left field, and so I can understand that as well. So it's this tough balance when you have a property that's already established. It's like, do you alienate the audience to make the players happy, or do you do a combination of both? It seems to be that they're doing a combination of both.
Interact with the main characters for like 30 seconds. They are both dead by the time the main characters arrive to pick up.
So what? They provided equipment. They also provided that letter, which mentioned Tess, actually, which was a great moment between Joel and Ellie. Again, revealing character. The show is not about a zombie apocalypse. I mean, it is at the very most basic level, but if you know anything about storytelling, it's obvious what the story is about, and it is about a man who lost his daughter, a girl who is kind of his surrogate daughter, but they're at odds, right? On one hand, you have Joel, who is emotionally, he's shutting himself off because all Ellie does is kind of in a way remind him of his daughter. But then Ellie is kind of like this wisecracking asshole. And so they're constantly in odds. And that's the beauty of this story, is how, and I'm sorry if you haven't played the game, this is a little bit spoilery. I should have mentioned that earlier on. We see them both arc, right? We see that they both need each other. But anyway, I'm getting far too much into review territory.
Up guns. So this entire episode is a sidestep. It has nothing to do with anything. Ellie and Joel could have just stopped by, found the house, picked up guns, and gone on their merry.
Right, but there'd be no emotional weight, right? There's emotional weight to it because we see how these characters connect to each other. He's never played the game, but one of my favorite things about the game was when you're navigating through these ruins, essentially, you're finding little notes, little stories of people. And to me, when you inject humanity into these seemingly mundane or unimportant things, there's so much power there, because again, it's about survival. It's about the human condition. It's not just about how do we kill the zombies.
Wait, it would have taken 10 seconds. Instead, you get an entire hour-long digression to do, as I say again.
It's not a digression. It's showing humans trying to exist or thrive, as you say right here, Ben, in a world that is extremely dangerous.
It's irrelevant. Beyond it being irrelevant, it has no stakes. So
he keeps saying no stakes. I don't get that. I mean, I would wager that if the Raiders would have gotten in, they would have just taken all of the supplies that they left behind for Joel and Ellie. And Joel and Ellie would have showed up in his version of the story, which would have taken 10 seconds to find nothing, to find a house that's been ransacked. So I'm not sure what point he's trying to get at here.
You want to have like an interesting conversation about love during the apocalypse? The big issue of love during the apocalypse is, what if you have a baby? What happens if you have a baby? Or should having babies be the purpose here?
Yeah, that's what was that movie? A Quiet Place, right? That explored that aspect. And I think he's valid here. I mean, that is another element of a story that could be extremely powerful in a post-apocalyptic situation. That doesn't mean that's the only story though, Ben. Sorry.
So let's take another example of a show that did this correctly. So Battlestar Galactica had an episode early on.
I saw the show. I liked it way back when for what it was, but I'm sure it's pretty dated right now. But let's hear what he has to say.
I think it was season 2. In which one of the questions was underpopulation, right? The fleet is depopulating. And so the question becomes, what do you do about abortion? So President Roslin, who is a lefty, she decides that she's going to
He had to throw that in there.
outlaw abortion because if you want humanity to survive, then it turns out that individual autonomy over your body is significantly less important than actually repopulating humanity. So here's Roslin announcing that she's outlawing abortion, right? Because again, the stakes are whether humanity survives. It is not whether two individuals fall in love in the middle of a farm, not threatened by anyone, which is
Again, you got Ben, my man, you got to stop looking at this as a surface level. The Last of Us is not about whether or not humanity survives. It's about the relationship of people. It is about the relationship specifically of a man, Joel, a very tortured, tragic character, and Ellie. That's what the story's about. And part of my critique of the show, and I know I'm getting in review territory, they pulled the camera back way too far. They should have pushed it in. It would have been a better show.
Story of this particular episode.
But again, you're phrasing it in a completely incorrect way, Ben. So we have a president here, right? So we have an assembly of some sort. We have created some kind of government again. It's not literally a bunch of these ragtag groups living in the waste like we do with The Last of Us. So sure, in this context, it makes sense. And I think what they did here was interesting because that's what's great about science fiction. You can kind of play with these ideas, these hypotheticals, and see them play out. But he's comparing apples to oranges here. It just doesn't work.
Do you actually try to preserve humanity or not? Two gay dudes falling in love and then dying of old age is not relevant to that particular conversation. I can say, well, that's not what they wanted to cover on the show. That's not what they were interested in covering on the show. The truth is, it's a much more compelling storyline. I mean, that's the entire plot line of A Quiet Place, right? You have an alien invasion. What do you do when you have...
So he's arguing that he thinks that it's not a compelling storytelling. So I will give him credit here. He did say, like, that is not what they were trying to do. And you're right. That's not what they were trying to do. Yeah, you can say A Quiet Place is a more interesting story. Personally, that's fine. But he's still trying to wrap The Last of Us around this surface level conflict being just zombies and human survival, and that's it.
Have a baby? Do you continue to have babies in view of the fact that there's a threat to the children, in view of the fact they're going to have to live difficult and rough lives and all the rest of it, right? But you can say, I see the argument. Okay, well, that's not what they wanted to take on in episode 3. So I have a question. What were they seeking to take on in episode 3?
I told you. It's about the human condition. It's about people trying to find happiness in this hell, in this apocalypse. That is what they were trying to do, Ben. And that is all. They had little elements there where they were providing supplies for Joel and Ellie, who are sort of the major driving force behind the story, the vector, if you will. But then it's also revealing character. Not only is it revealing character of Bill and Frank, it is revealing Joel and Ellie through that letter when he brings up Tess.
It's the major topic that they were seeking to take on. People falling in love during the apocalypse. What are the stakes? We don't know any of these characters, nor are we going to care about them beyond this particular episode.
I mean, the stakes are still survival, right? The Raiders show up. They shoot one of the guys. We think for a little bit that guy may die. I'm not sure what else he's asking for here.
Which means that it's basically just a sidetrack. It's a throwaway episode. But it's so important because it has gay people, you see. It's so important. And, you know, the guy who created the video game, of course, is a big lefty. In season 2, apparently, if it mirrors the video games, from what I've been told, it gets very trans and very lesbian and all the rest of it. And that's their prerogative. They're the creators of the show. But all of the talk about how this was like an excellent episode of TV that was wrapped into a broader show is not true.
Wrong. False. Again, false. So, yes, it was a great episode. Was it the best episode of a show I've ever seen? Hell no. Maybe the best episode I've seen in 2023? Yeah, I'll grant them that. But that is what makes this entire story interesting, because it's not just about fighting zombies. If it were about fighting zombies, we wouldn't be attracted to it, right? We've seen all that before. It's completely boring. What we're attracted to is creating meaningful relationships in a shitty world like we see with The Last of Us. That's it. I don't know why he's missing that. He's looking at things far too much on the surface level.
And pretending that it is ignoring kind of the dynamics of the show. So there's my critique of The Last of Us episode 3. I know I'm not allowed to say that I didn't like it. You have to say you loved it. And you particularly loved the most, like the most graphic parts of it. Those are the parts you love the most, right? I mean, because if you don't say that, it means you're a homophobe or something.
All right, I think I'm going to end it there. Let me know, what do you feel about Ben's critique here? I feel like he's out of his league. Like, this is not his area of expertise. It clearly shows, if you know anything about storytelling, he is just way, way off base. I tried to grant him the fact that he did not play the game, so he's a little bit ignorant into the complete arc of Joel and Ellie. I will also grant him that I feel like the filmmakers pulled the camera back way too far, right? We're seeing these global events as opposed to what the story is about, and it's about two people only, Joel and Ellie. But thanks for hanging out with me. Hopefully enjoyed this one. If you like content like this and you wanted me to react or analyze different videos you find on YouTube through the lens of storytelling, of course, then let me know in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.